is no smile in the shadow, there is a real face there. And he who endures its gaze will never be the same again. With the shadow the road begins. Not up but in. Not to victory but to transformation. He who has entered his shadow no longer plays a role. He begins to breathe as self. As a pure, uncivilized but living being. And only he who has embraced his shadow has the right to come out to the light. Because his light is no longer a mask. It is an echo of what he has experienced in the darkness. After silence there's always thunder. Not outside. Inside. Where everything has been muted, subdued, it starts to break. It's not a depression. It's not a breakdown. It's an explosion the soul has been waiting for. Everything you've been holding back rises to the surface. All the can'ts that have built walls around you suddenly crack. The pain you've been silent about. The desire you've been hiding behind politeness. The anger you swallowed. None of this is emotion. It's dynamite. And if you've gotten here, you've already lit the fuse. People think waking up is about tranquility, harmony. In reality, it's chaos. Painful. Ruthless. Unbearable. It's like being ripped out of your own skin. Like when you start to see yourself without jewelry, and you can't look into it anymore. This state is like cracking skin. The metaphor of the molting snake is not a pretty picture. It's about rupture. It's about agony. About coming out of yourself. Because the old version of you doesn't work anymore. It's cramped. It's suffocating. It's dead. You're starting to say no. Not because you're angry. It's because you can't take it anymore. You stop keeping yourself in line. You fall out of rhythm. You get out of the loop. You disappear from hangouts. You lose old connections. And it feels like you're alone. But it's not loneliness. It's a rebirth. People around you start asking you what's wrong. And you can't answer. Because you don't realize what you're becoming. It's like standing in front of a mirror and not recognizing your reflection. The same body, a new look. Same smile, different presence. No filters. Without skin. Without the permission of others. Society doesn't like these moments. They are uncomfortable. They are uncontrollable. Because a man who has begun to see is dangerous. He doesn't play by the rules. He's no longer afraid of losing. He's already lost everything that was holding him back. And in that destruction, something new is born. Not a persona. Not an image. It's a presence. You're not trying to be liked anymore. You don't prove yourself. You don't ask. You just are. And that is already more than you once were. Birth is never clean. It's bloody, it's convulsive, it's screaming. And your transformation is the same. But afterward, you no longer seek approval. You don't bend to the opinions of others. You breathe, and with that you say, I am. And once the shell is cracked, you can't glue it back together. It's not a defeat. It's a victory. Because now you are not assembled, you are real. And the real never fits into old frames. He either breaks them down or he creates his own. After the internal explosion comes silence. Not dead silence, real silence. It is no longer the silence that hides fear. It is the silence before choice. You see everything now. Who you were. What you could have been. What was forced on you. What doesn't work anymore. And inside, the first real action is born. Denial. Rebellion doesn't start with a scream. It starts with a silent, enough. A deep feeling that you can no longer live in someone else's. That you don't want to be part of a mechanism that devalues. You don't want to be in a world where everything is measured by masks, where to live is to pretend, where love is a contract and freedom is a fiction. The rebel archetype is not about destruction. It's about creating something new that hasn't existed yet. But you can only create when you've destroyed your slavery. Slavery in the head, in the body, in words, in the way you walk, the way you look, the way you keep silent when you want to scream. The world fears rebels. Because a rebel is not necessarily against. He's just no longer in favor. And that's enough to make the system fail. For people around you to start laughing nervously. For those closest to you to say, there's something wrong with you. But that means you're on the right track. Because what's wrong is no longer wrong with you, it's wrong with them. In a world where lying is called politeness. Where obedience is virtue. Where fear is goodness. Nietzsche didn't just talk about the Superman. He saw it. As an explosion of spirit. As a consciousness that no longer asks for permission. The Superman is not a hero. It's someone who has thrown off the wrappings of morality, fear, pity. It's someone who is willing to live without illusions. Without the soft trap of safety. It's someone who is willing to walk alone if the truth lies on the other side of the crowd. Prometheus stole the fire not because he wanted to destroy order. It was because he couldn't take any more powerlessness. And that's why he was chained. Because anyone who brings fire becomes a threat to the darkness. A rebel is not an image. It's not a pose. It's not a social media video. It's an inner descent to being less than you are. And if it's real, it burns. But it doesn't burn. It cleanses. The example is always there. A man who gave up a successful career to pursue something that truly lives in his blood. Someone who left a marriage where everything was right but dead. Someone who told the truth knowing they would lose everything. They don't seek fame. They're not posturing. They just can't keep quiet anymore. There's no heroism in that. There's something more, dignity. The inner feeling that you're worthy of being yourself even if it comes at a price. Because it costs more to not be yourself. Your freedom begins where you are no longer afraid of being an outcast. Because an outcast is not someone who has been rejected. It's someone who has broken free from the power of other people's rules. Pain doesn't come when you are weak. It comes when it's time for transformation. And if you try to drown it out, you lose the chance. Because pain is not a hindrance. This is an alchemist. That's someone who knows how to turn lead into gold. How to make you into a new being, no illusions, no masks, no pity. The world says pain must be treated. But there is pain that is not cured, it is lived. To the core. To the bone. To the point where you can't breathe and yet you do. When you can't take it anymore and you stay anyway. Not because you have to, but because you know there's something in it. Something real. Something that's yours. This pain is like a fire you're thrown into without warning. At first, your body screams. Your thoughts run in circles. You try to find a way out. But there is no way out. There's only deeper. Deeper. Where there are no more words. No self. No support. And that's where the most important part begins. Where there's no one left but you. Where no advice, no book, no voice can help. It's just you and the fire. Everything that isn't real burns. Everything that was built on fear falls apart. Everything built on other people breaks. And suddenly you can see. Not with your eyes. Inwardly. You see that this pain is not a punishment. It's an initiation. It's a passage. It is a doorway. One who has never burned never knows what he is made of. And he who has endured becomes different. Tougher but softer. Straight but not rigid. Deeper but not broken. There is an old truth. A true warrior is not one who feels no pain. It's the one who learns to talk to it. One who listens to the pain and hears in it the voice of his path. Not the voice of regret. Not the voice of revenge. But the voice of growth. Pain is a mirror. In it you see who you are. Not in the high moments, not in the triumphs. But in the falls, in the tears of the night, in the silence where there is nothing but breath. A master is not one who has learned to avoid pain. But one who accepts it as part of himself. As a touch. As a whisper. As a gift. For pain is the language in which the truth speaks to you. And the one who has learned to listen to that voice no longer seeks the easy. He's looking for the real thing. Because he knows that all light is temporary. And the real always comes through fire. When you stop running from pain, you become immortal. Because he who's been through his own hell is no longer afraid of other people's demons. He's seen his own. And came out of it not victorious but a creator. Freedom is not anarchy. Not the breaking of systems. Not a wild, I want it that way. True freedom is the ability to be a power unto yourself. Not a dictator. Not a victim. But the point inside where everything diverges and converges back into order. Power to yourself is not about control. Control is the outer suit of power. Real power is presence. It's a state where you don't have to prove anything. You don't have to hold yourself back. Because you're not running away anymore. Not from yourself, not from pain, not from temptation. You stay. Mastery begins with the little things. The way you stay silent. How you wait. How you respond. It's not about reaction. It's about depth. It's about the ability to be yourself when there's a storm around you. To be a wall but alive. To be a sword but without blood. A man who has no power over himself will always be dependent. He won't be able to say no. He won't be able to pause. He will not be able to choose. He will escape into food, sex, entertainment, approval. He will be a slave to the external. Because inside is emptiness. Emptiness is not the problem. It's space. But if you don't fill it, the world will fill it. And the world will never offer you anything real. Only copies. Only wrappings. Only a counterfeit of power. Nietzsche knew that freedom requires discipline. Not prison discipline, not military discipline. Discipline of the spirit. The ability not to follow the first impulse. The ability to listen to yourself even when you want to shout. The ability to act when you want to give up. Real discipline is not about inhibitions. It's about dignity. It's about inner resistance. It's about not bottling yourself up. You don't throw your body at every desire. You don't trade your attention for nothing. You're going to the center. And from that center you control. It's like a rider and a wild horse. The horse is instinct, energy, power. If you don't tame it, it will take you to the abyss. If you tame it hard, it goes wild and hates you. But if you learn to talk to it, it becomes part of you. And then you're not just a rider. You are unity. That's power. Not over the body. Not over the world. But over yourself. It is the ability to be complete. Not to find yourself in other people's hands. Not to save yourself with someone else's warmth. Not to depend on looks, on thought, on applause. Just to be. And that is enough. The force is silent. It does not run ahead. It doesn't demand recognition. It's in the eyes. In your posture. The way you walk into a room. And the way you silently walk out when everything inside says you don't belong. And that's where the profound change begins. Because when you've learned to master yourself, you no longer need to be guarded. You don't have to be coaxed. You don't need to be controlled. You are your own king. You are your own world. He who has mastered himself is the master of the worlds. Because the universe doesn't begin in the stars. It begins with the one who is able to say to himself, I am not a victim. I am the beginning. When all the old has burned out, when roles have lost their meaning, when even a name sounds hollow, creation begins. Not career. Not status. Not social success. It's about building a myth. Who you have become, and who you have chosen to be. A myth is not fiction. It's truth elevated to the level of symbol. It's a story where every step you take makes sense. Where you are no longer an accident. Not a function. Not a reaction. But an action. Presence. Movement. You are creating yourself anew. But no longer from patterns. Not out of advice. Not from fancy instructions. But from what you've been through. What you've experienced. What is imprinted in you. In your wounds, in your words, in your body. The story of every great man is not a story of success. It's a story of myth. A man who had no chance but became. Who had no support but resisted. Who lost everything and so was able to be himself. Not an ideal. Not a hero. But a living legend who burns his own path. Myth isn't what they say about you. It's how you walk. How you stand when you're betrayed. How you remain silent when you are misunderstood. How you carry on when the world says stop. It's those micro moments that only the sky sees. And that decide everything. The man who creates his myth doesn't ask permission. He doesn't look for guarantees. He doesn't wait until it's convenient. He simply begins. One step. One action. One choice to do differently than everyone else. And with that, another story begins. There will always be noise. Doubts. Criticism. But it's all a shadow. And myth lives in the light. It doesn't shout. It sounds like music that you can't help but feel. Because it's not about perfection. It's about density. About the power of being yourself to the fullest. Nietzsche wrote, man is the rope between the beast and the Superman. But that rope is not a sentence. It is an opportunity. And the one who walks it to the end will no longer be a man in the usual sense. He will be a symbol. A sign. A flame. The world does not change from structures. It changes from those who have made themselves out of nothing. Who made meaning out of pain. Out of falling, support. Out of loneliness, clarity. Out of brokenness, newness. Not out of wreckage, but out of spirit. Myth is not about glory. It's about depth. It's about leaving not just a trace in the world, but an echo. So that even after you're gone, there's still a resonance. In other people's actions. In someone else's choices. In someone else's decision to be real too. To be myth is to be larger than life. To be a story that is read not with the eyes, with the heart. A story that empowers those who are still at the beginning. To create yourself is to leave yourself behind. Forever. You have to become a myth. Because in this world of copies and templates, only the myth has the power to live forever. And only he who has created himself is able to give this world something that has not been there yet. When all is said, when the pain has passed, when the myth is created, there is a return. But not back to where you came from. There's no going back. Because the world that was burned with your old self. You're not going back to the world. You're going back to yourself. Without the need for recognition. Without the need to win. No attempt to respond. Now it's just silence. But not empty. It's alive. Complete. Whole. You don't fight anymore. Because there's no one. You're not looking. Because you're not already lost. You're not proving. Because all that is needed is resounding in your presence. After everything there is simplicity. Not ostentatious. It's real. You're no longer torn between who to be. You are. And that's enough. In every movement, in every step, in every look, there is a point where everything comes together. Now your yes is the whole world, and your no is like the back of a sword, because they don't come out of fatigue, and not out of fear. They come from the center. And anything not from the center is no longer a concern. That's maturity right there. Not where the power screams, but where it is silent because it knows what it is, and no longer needs anything but the truth. You don't need to fight anymore. Not because you're weaker, but because you have become deeper. Where others fight, you pass in silence. Where others prove, you watch. Where others hide, you are present. This is not peace. It's not a pretty picture against the backdrop of a sunset. It is a calm that has been through war. A calm that stands in the center of the storm and doesn't flinch, because there's nothing left to lose, and nothing to win. This is not the end. It's a new form. A life without having to choose a mask. A path where a step is truth, where a breath is an action, where being yourself is the answer. The myth is created. The path has been traveled. And now you're not just a person. You are a presence. You are the silence that has fire in it. You are the light that doesn't scream. You are the sign that remains even when you disappear. And that is your eternity.